Hey everyone, Kyle Hamrick here for School of Motion. It's Adobe Max time, and that means we just got a brand new version of After Effects. I'm pretty excited to show you a couple of the new features they just added, so let's dive in and check it out. Today we're going to be covering the big new features in After Effects 2020, which is more officially known as After Effects version 17. With every update, Adobe puts out a full description of all the new features and fixes in full detail, which we've provided a link to. I highly recommend you look through that to make sure you're up to date on anything I might not cover in this video. Now let's dive in and check out what's new in After Effects. The After Effects team has put lots of work into speed and stability. So in this release, you're going to see several performance boosts as well as bug fixes. Cinema 4D has upgraded to R21, so we'll be getting a new version of Cinema 4D Lite and the CINAware plugin. And then we have two new features that'll be really helpful for templates or McGirts or just rig work in general, which are the drop-down menu and text styling expressions. So let's take a minute and talk about speed in After Effects. The After Effects team gets a lot of feedback about this. And one thing that's important to note is that in a complex app like After Effects, speed means a couple different things. So I'm taking this language directly from a public statement by the After Effects team that they view it in terms of three different things. There's rendering performance, which is how fast can After Effects get pixels onto your screen. This is the speed of previews and of exports. There's interactive performance, which is how fast does the UI respond to your actions. How responsive is After Effects while you're actually working in it. And then there's workflow performance, which is how fast can you complete a task in After Effects. This is the actual tools and features that may speed up things that you used to have to do manually. So specifically in this version, the After Effects team has made big enhancements on preview playback optimization. So what this means is that once your RAM preview is fully built, you should get real-time playback on your previews without any slowdown, even if you're interacting with the UI. There's probably always going to be a few edge cases and exceptions, so again, you should check out the release notes for that. But generally speaking, you should have a really good preview experience. Obviously, this isn't something I can really demo here, so dive into some of your older projects and see if you can feel the difference. The After Effects team is continuing to work on other aspects of performance and has publicly stated that they are actively working on multi-threaded CPU rendering as well. So you can kind of draw your own conclusions from that, but hopefully that means we'll continue to see speed enhancements over the next couple versions. We'll also see an overall performance boost on shape layers. They should be quite a bit faster than they used to be. And there's also this handy little group ungroup option that you can get by right-clicking on a shape layer here, which is just a nice little convenience feature. You'll also see a performance boost on certain expressions that don't need to recalculate every frame. Something like posterize times 0, for example, was previously still actually recalculating, but now it will just hold that value and only calculate once, which should make everything faster. You'll also see a performance boost for expressions used in combination with master properties. If you're not familiar with master properties, we posted a video explaining them when they first came out last year. And if you're interested in learning more about expressions, make sure to stick around for the rest of this video. We've also got a major performance boost to content-aware fill, which was introduced earlier this year. Lastly, we have a big boost for performance and workflow for multi-channel EXR files. These are primarily used if you're creating multi-layer passes from 3D software that you're then compositing within After Effects. As I said, you'll see a big-time performance boost, and as of this version, you now have the ability to import them as layered compositions, similar to a layered Photoshop or Illustrator document, which should make this workflow much faster and better. They now have native support for Cryptomat, and there's even a contact sheet view, so you can view all your passes at once. So in general, you should be able to spend a lot less time setting this up and a lot more time making your 3D passes look awesome. Speaking of 3D, Cinema 4D was recently updated to R21, which means that we get a brand new version of Cinema 4D Lite with this version of After Effects. EJ released a video in September going over all the new features of the full version. Obviously, we don't get all of those with the Lite version, but we do get quite a few. Specifically, I wanted to point out these new cap and bevel options, which should be a really nice enhancement for Lite users. There's a new layout and some new functionality here that makes it a little easier to work with. We have a new step bevel, which you can see enables some cool stuff. And there's also this new curve bevel editor where you can create custom bevels exactly the way you want them. And you can even save and load presets, which should be super handy. There's also a new denoising filter that should help your passes look better. And the CINAware plugin that allows you to bring Cinema 4D objects directly into After Effects like this has been updated as well to work with R21. I should also point out that the After Effects ray tracing 3D engine has been removed as of this version. It was already deprecated previously, but it's actually gone now. So if you have any old projects that are still relying on the ray tracer, you'll either need to sunset those or go ahead and update them to the Cinema 4D renderer. These last couple features won't be for everybody, but as someone who makes a lot of templates and expression rigs, there's something that I'm pretty excited about. New to this version, we have drop-down menu expression controllers, which I'll show you in a minute, but it also means that drop-down menus in existing effects can be added to the Essential Graphics panel for use in McGirts or in master properties. So in this composition, I just have a solid with the fractal noise effect on it. Fractal noise actually has multiple drop-downs in it, but we'll just look at the first one here, which determines what kind of fractal is being used to generate the pattern. I'll just set that back to basic. Previously, drop-down menus were something that could not be added to the Essential Graphics panel, but now in this version, they can. So you see here, I've added it, which would make it easy to access if I were just building a template for myself. But more importantly, these can be accessed as master properties. So if I add this to another composition, you see that fractal type is now available as a master property. I would be able to access this and change it however I see fit right here. So generally, this is going to make a lot more stuff available for master properties, which is really nice. So additionally, we're getting a drop-down menu control as one of the expression controls that you can add to layers to control various things. To explain how to use this, I'm going to have to explain expressions a little bit. So warning, expressions content. So to use the drop-down menu expression control, we're going to have to write some expressions, specifically a conditional statement, which is commonly known as an if-else. The way this works is you specify a condition. For example, a drop-down menu is set to a certain option, and when that happens, a certain result occurs. Otherwise, a different result occurs. And you write it in a format like this, where you say if condition in parentheses, and then you use these curly braces to define your results. So result A happens if the condition occurs. Else, otherwise, result B, the other thing. You'll commonly see it written in this sort of more cascading vertical format, because as conditional statements get more complicated, you end up needing lots of space like that, and it helps just make things clearer. We're doing pretty simple ones today, so I'm going to keep it in a more single line sentence format, because I think that'll be a little easier for newer folks to understand. Now I'm going to explain this concept using a checkbox controller just because it's a bit simpler, and then I'll show you how to use it with a drop-down controller in a minute. In this composition, I've added a checkbox controller to this layer, which, just to point out, you can find it in Effects, Expression Controls, Checkbox Control. What I'm going to do here is use this checkbox to determine whether or not this layer is visible. So I will Alt-click the stopwatch for opacity, and I'm going to start by creating a variable for the checkbox just to make things a little easier to look at. var variable, and then I'll define my variable as checkbox equals, and then I'll just pick whip to that checkbox. End my line with a semicolon and hit enter. Now I will say if checkbox, and then you need a double equals sign here. That's just the way it works. Equals 0. That means it's off in the case of a checkbox. Close parentheses. So if the checkbox is off, then I want this layer's opacity to be 0. Else, if the checkbox equals anything but 0, anything but off, then I want this layer's opacity to be 100. So right now, the checkbox control is on, so this layer is visible. If I turn it off, click, gone. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a pretty quick, basic lesson in how to use an if-else expression. So I have another composition here with a couple of shapes with specific colors. You can see red circle, blue square, yellow triangle. And then I have a null layer that I'm going to use to hold my expression control. Right-click, Effect, Expression Controls, drop-down menu control. Now I'm going to start by establishing the options that I can choose from by clicking this Edit button right here. Instead of item 1, let's say red circle. Instead of item 2, blue square. Instead of item 3, let's say yellow triangle. You could add more options if you want, or take them away to have fewer, whatever you want. I'll hit OK. And now you can see these are my options on this menu. You can define these as whatever you like. As far as After Effects is concerned, this is 1, 2, 3. So now we're going to write an expression just like the one I showed you to determine the opacity of these layers so that we can use this menu to select which shape is visible. So we'll expose this menu control here. Now on red circle, I'll alt-click the opacity, and let's write var menu. I'm just choosing that to be the name of my variable. You can name it whatever you like. Then I'll pick whip to that drop-down menu right there. Semicolon. If, parentheses, menu equals 1, close the parentheses, curly brace, 100. This time I'm deciding if it equals that thing, then be on. Since red circle is the first choice on the menu, that's what I want to pick. Close my curly brace. Else, if it equals anything except 1, then this opacity should be 0. So let's choose something else, and the circle turns off. Perfect. I'm going to copy this, alt-click, paste it to blue, and just change this to 2, because blue square just wants to look at the second option on that menu, right? Alt-click, paste it down here to the yellow triangle, change that to 3. So now each layer is looking at one specific option on the menu. So if blue square is chosen from the menu, that's what's visible. Yellow triangle, red circle. Great. If I want to add this to the Essential Graphics panel, I can just drop this menu control right here. You can see I can still make changes here, or more importantly, I can drop this into another composition and use this as a master property to determine what's visible. Let's go ahead and close the Essential Graphics here. I can pull this over. Let's set this one to be red circle. The great thing about master properties is that by using only one composition, I can actually have instances of that composition. And you can see here that I can choose multiple options from that list that I set up, but it's still only one composition. I set up another drop-down control here on this text layer using a very similar expression. So do you like these updates? Maybe? No? Yes. I certainly do. I know this isn't something that all of you are necessarily going to use, but generally speaking, it should make templates and motion graphics templates a lot more intuitive to use because you'll be able to have controls that actually say what they do. Previously, we had to use things like slider controls that were a little bit arbitrary, where you might choose between different color schemes or something by choosing 1, 2, 3. But now you could actually choose, light mode, dark mode, whatever the case may be, right? So this should be a nice step towards making templates and expression rigs a lot more intuitive. This last new feature is also pretty expression-y, but don't be intimidated. Even if this isn't something that you are interested in coding yourself, it should make text presets a lot more useful. It should make motion graphics templates in particular a lot more useful and versatile. And this will be really nice for people that are building those templates. Specifically, what we're getting here is expression access to text styling properties. So while there are a couple of exceptions, generally speaking, if it's something that's in the character panel here, you can use expressions to get or set specific style properties based on hard-coded values, based on other layers, based on expression controls you create. It really just gives you a lot of cool new options. For quite a while, we've been able to link source text using expressions. Source text is the actual characters that you typed into your text layer. You can use the property pick whip, or you could alt-click and then use the expression pick whip right here. Just tie this layer directly to that other layer, and now it will take the same text string, but notice that it's still using its original styling. With this new feature, it's possible to pull the style from that layer, either separate from or in addition to the actual source text. If you just want the style, but want to retain the original text string that you typed in here, you can just add .style to the end of this line. And now it will pull all of those text properties. You'll see this layer was set to Gotham Black at 274 size, pretty much everything else on the defaults. And now this layer is also doing that, despite the fact that it is written in a different font, different size, had a different text string. Now in this case, I'm pulling the style from the first character of this other line. And there are actually ways to be more specific about this. If you're familiar with the expressions flyout menu, there's a new category here called text. And you can reference all kinds of stuff. Notice you can reference specific fonts. This will call up a list of all the fonts that you have installed on your machine. You can also reference all the available text properties here. You see you can set size, faux bold, leading, fill color, etc. Like I said, pretty much everything in the character panel is available here. If I want to be making an exact duplicate of this other layer, right now I'm just pulling the style but using my original text string. I could, to the end of this, add dot, and then go in here to the flyout menu, properties, set text. Inside here, I could set a specific text string to be my value. In this case, I could type expressions, and it will now display expressions in the style of the layer that it's looking at. Or I can point that back to this source text, and so it's taking from that layer, from that source text, take the style, and then set the text to that source text. As you can see, there are a lot of other options in here, so you can manually set things like the font or various other styling properties. And that also means that if you create expression controls for these things, you can potentially manipulate these easily and expose them as master properties or for motion graphics templates. Another really useful thing this enables is being able to save and apply animation presets that will hold all the text settings for a specific look. This is going to be really useful if you have specific branding guidelines that you need to follow all the time, so you could set it up once and then just apply it as needed. Here I have a text layer that has no expressions on it, but I've already created an animation preset that I can just apply here. Animation, it's in my recents because I just made it, text styling. And now if I open this up, you can see the style is setting the font to Azo Sans Black. It's setting the fill color to this blue. It's setting apply stroke, true. Yes, apply a stroke. Stroke width to 16. Stroke color to white. Font size to 200. Tracking to 40. Really anything that you want to store in here, you can. And just to point out, anything that's not being overridden in here is still editable. So I could still do italics and all caps and things like that. But if it's referenced here in the expression, it will override whatever's happening in the character panel. Just in case you don't know how to create an animation preset, you just select whatever keyframeable properties you want. They can have keyframes or not. It'll just hold the value if there's no keyframes. And you go to Animation, Save Animation Preset. Give it a location and a name, and then you can just call it up whenever you need it in the future. Being able to dynamically set text size is also going to be really useful, especially for paragraph text. If you use the text tool and drag a box, you can create what's called paragraph text, or a text box. I'll just fill it up with some lorem ipsum here. It will reflow depending on the text size here, but previously this has been pretty hard to access. It was only accessible if you added your source text to the Essential Graphics panel and then threw a control in there. But it still wasn't really possible to edit it dynamically like you can now. I'm going to create Effect, Expression Control, Slider Control, and I will use this to control the text size. Let's go ahead and just set it to 50 for now. We'll open up our source text, and in here, let's add dot style dot, and then let's find font size, set font size value. So in place of value, I could set a specific value like 200, and that's the size that will make the text. But instead, let's pick whip that to the slider that we created. And now we have an easily accessible text size right here, which of course can also be fed to the Essential Graphics panel. Could name this text size, and then you could easily feed this out as a master property or for a motion graphics template. I've got one last example that combines these new text expressions with the drop-down menu. Now in the last version, much like the size, you could allow the font to be editable if you fed this into the Essential Graphics panel, but then that exposed the entire font list. So being able to do it this way, you could create just a very small list of options of acceptable fonts. You can see here I set up a few options of different fonts right here using my drop-down control. And in the source text, I set up an expression. Variable A is a specific font, Azo Sans Regular. Variable B is HT Neon, so on. You can just choose within these parentheses, you can just set text, font, and then whatever font you choose from this list is what it will put in there. And then with this if-else expression here, this one's written a little differently because it has multiple choices. You can use this font selector to choose what font this is. This should be really handy for templates, and it will help keep things within specific brand guidelines, but still give people options. So this should be really useful for text templates in general, making those just really streamlined and easy to use. Hopefully you saw some cool new stuff in here that you're excited to try out. Again, the Adobe team releases a full description of any new features along with this update, so it's always good to check those out and make sure you're aware of anything new or different. I hope this video got you excited to dive into After Effects and test out the new features. Maybe bust out a project you made with a ton of shape layers and see how the performance compares to the previous version. Maybe one of these features was the thing you were waiting for that kept you from really diving into making templates. With every new version comes new possibilities, so get in there, explore, and figure out what you can do with them. If the expressions-related features I showed today were way over your head, School of Motion has just announced a new expressions course, Expression Session, that may be perfect for you. It's taught by the dynamic duo of Zach Levitt and Noel Honig. You can come in with zero expressions experience and you'll learn to love all this crazy coding stuff, which can open up a whole new side of After Effects for you. So head over to schoolofmotion.com/courses and check it out. Again, if you want to stay up to date on After Effects and on the entire motion design industry, please subscribe and head over to schoolofmotion.com to sign up for a free student account. You'll be able to download a project file with some of the demos I just showed you and get access to tons of other cool stuff as well.